discussion is elements of environmental risk assessment. We should know what is risk, environmental risk. So the definition for risk is it is the harmful effects to human health which affects the human health or the ecological systems due to some environmental stressor. So what is stressor? It is a physical, chemical or biological entity which induces an adverse effects in humans or any ecosystem. So there are some natural hazards which come under geological hazards, meteorological hazards and biological hazards. The geological hazards which are like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, landslides, etc. Then meteorological hazards includes hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, extreme temperatures. Biological hazards which causes the disease outbreaks, that is due to pathogens and any pest infestations which affects the crops and other ecosystems. So first of all, the elements. First element in the environmental risk assessment is hazard identification and hazard accounting. So we have to know what is hazard identification. So this is a process in which we are recognizing and listing all the potential effects or potential hazards which is harming the environment or any other processes. So this is a critical step. Hazard identification is critical for risk management and it involves several methods and techniques to ensure comprehensive coverage. And the next slide is about the methods of hazard identification. There are various methods, about 9 methods are mentioned here. First method is hazard and operability study. So in this method, it is a systematic examination using some guide words which contains no, more, less as well as like that. So the purpose of this method is identifying the hazards and operability issues in any design or in operation. This is primarily used in the chemical processing industries. Second method is failure modes and effects analysis, FMEA. So in this method, we are focusing about what are all the potential failure modes and the causes which are caused in the system operations. And the method contains structured approach which lists all the failure modes and their consequences. So this is finding application in automotive, aerospace and manufacturing industries. The third method is what if analysis. So this is a brainstorming questions, scenarios which has many questions like what if. So this is finding application in preliminary analysis stages. The next method is checklist method. So here this is here we are preparing a checklist of all the known hazards without missing in any one of the hazard. So in this method, this is a industry specific or process specific checklist method. This is finding application in safety inspections and audits. The next method is fault tree analysis method. In this method, we are finding out where there is failure occurring. So this is represented diagrammatically and starting from a top event and mapping all its causes. Then this is also applied in reliability engineering and other risk assessment methods. Event tree analysis. This is also a diagrammatic method. Here the events are listed in a tree-like diagram. So here the consequences of all the events one by one is found out and analyzed. This is a probabilistic risk assessment which finds application in nuclear power plant industries. Next method is HACCP, hazard analysis and critical control points. So this is mainly used in the food and beverage industry and for identifying and managing food safety hazards. So this is a systematic approach which focuses on critical points in the process. Next method is a structured what if technique. Here also there are many brainstorming questions which are structured and which has some guide words to prompt the discussions. This is finding application in engineering projects and process design. Next method is job safety analysis method. In this method we are breaking down the job task into different tasks and then we are identifying the hazard. So this is mainly for safety management. Next topic is hazard accounting. After identifying all the potential risks, we have to account all the hazards. So here this involves a tracking and managing all the identified hazards in the previous step and to ensure the effective control and mitigation. So this contains documenting all the hazards, assessing their risk levels and implementing the control measures and monitoring how these measures are effective. Then there are some steps in the hazard accounting. First step is documentation. So we have identified the hazards. After identifying the hazards, we have to record the hazards in a systematic manner, that is called as a hazard register. So here it includes all the detailed descriptions, potential impacts and location of each hazard. Next step is risk assessment. So we have recorded, then we have to assess all the risk. So how severe the risk is, and we have to prioritize the hazards based on their risk level using risk matrices or other assessment tools. Third step is control measures. Then we have to take step for controlling the hazards or reduce the hazards or eliminate the hazards. So it includes engineering controls, administrative controls, personal protective equipments, that is PPE. The next step is monitoring and review. After applying the control measures, we have to monitor all the steps, all the control measures and review the control measures for its effectiveness, and we have to update it in the hazard register and risk assessments. Communication. Next step is communication. We have to ensure all the stakeholders are aware of all the identified hazards and control measures. So there should be effective communication channels. Next step is also training and awareness. So we have to provide training for the employees in the industry and stakeholders on hazard identification and control, and promote a culture of safety and proactive hazard management, which is taking steps before any hazard occurs. So before any incidents, we have to be active, that is called proactive hazard management. Then incident reporting. If at all any incident is happening in an industry or any institution or anywhere, then we have to report the hazard, report about the hazard, report about the incident and near misses, and this will find to improve the hazard identification and control processes. Then the next topic is about the fate and behavior of toxics and persistent substances in the environment. There are many hazardous materials which are toxic and they may persist in the environment, which is affecting the environment as well as health adversely. So we will see something about the fate and behavior of those contaminants. So understanding the fate and behavior is crucial for our effective environmental management and risk assessment. So these substances, what are all the substances? These will cause significant risk to human health, wildlife or ecosystem. So persistence. So what do you mean by persistent? So this is defined as the duration that a substance or a contaminant is remaining in the environment before it is degraded or broken down. Then the factors influencing the persistence. So for a long time, how it persists, what is the reason for persisting for a long time? That is, First one, chemical stability. So that is based on the strength of the chemical bonds in the contaminant, or how it is easy to break down. That is based on the chemical bond, strength of the chemical bond. Then environmental conditions like pH, temperature, sunlight. This can affect the degradation rates of the contaminants. Then the biodegradability rates, that is caused by the microorganisms. So the work of microorganism will cause the degradability of a substance. So that will affect the persistence nature. Then transport. The contaminant may also be transported from one place to another through some media called air, water or soil. So how it is transported from one place to another. One is through atmospheric transport, that is volatile substances can be carried out by wind over long distances. And hydrological transport through water, rivers, lakes and groundwater. Suspended matters can be carried out. So soil transport, the contaminant may absorb to soil particles, which can affect the substances from moving from one place to another inside the soil. And another one important term is bioaccumulation. So the definition for the word bioaccumulation is, it occurs when a substance accumulates in the body tissues or cell tissues faster than it is more metabolized or excreted. So it will remain in the body and it will cause some effects called as biomagnification, that is increasing the concentration or effect inside the body tissues. So factors influencing bioaccumulation includes lipophilicity, that is fat loving substances are there. So that will get attached to the fatty tissues. Then trophic levels, that is through food chain, the organisms of higher level will take up the organisms of lower level. So through the lower level organisms, the toxins are transferred to the higher level organisms or even to the humans. Then exposure duration is also an important parameter. Longer exposure means the bioaccumulation may increase. And biomagnification is another term. Here that it is defined as the increasing concentration of a substance as it is moving up from the food chain, that is from the lower living organisms to the higher living organisms. That is trophic transfer mechanism. Predators will accumulate toxins from their prey. So they will take the prey, and through the prey the toxins will be transferred to the predators. So there it will increase in concentration. The higher concentration will be higher in the top predators. So this will lead to the health implications also, including humans. Another one process is transformation. So definition is, transformation involves chemical changes any substance undergoes in the environment. So types of transformation may be chemical or microbial. Chemical means chemical reaction between two substances, that may be hydrolysis or oxidation, reduction, like that. Then microbial degradation, breakdown by microorganisms. This is often resulting in the less harmful substances. Then environmental and health impacts. What are all the environmental effects or impacts? This can disrupt any ecosystem. This can harm wildlife and alter habitat conditions. Human health also, it can cause health issues like cancer, developmental problems, reproductive effects and organ damage. So regulation and management. How can we regulate and manage this type of contaminants? So first thing is monitoring. We have to monitor regularly in the environmental media like air, water, soil for the presence of any toxic substances. Then risk assessment. We have to evaluate or quantify and find out the quantity and quality of the potential risk associated with the substances and based on their fate and behavior. Then remediation. So we have to implement any cleanup or mitigation measures to address this contamination. And regulatory framework are also helpful in managing the toxic and persistent substances. EPA is there, European Union reach is there. Then examples for persistent substances, toxic substances include persistent organic pollutants like PCBs, that is printed control boards, DDT and dioxins, heavy metals including mercury, lead, cadmium, like that, nickel, etc. Microplastics are small particles of plastic which are accumulating in the environment. Then what are all the best practices for managing this type of toxic and persistent substances? First of all, we have to prevent it by minimizing the usage of some substances which are causing the sources of hazardous substances. Then education and training also is necessary. We have to educate the stakeholders on proper handling and disposal practices. Alternative solutions also we can find out by using purer raw materials or less harmful substitutes. Then research and development for better understanding in the technologies for managing these contaminants. Then next topic is about properties, processes and parameters controlling the fate and transport of contaminants. What are all the controlling factors, parameters, what are the properties and processes. So contaminant properties, if you take chemical properties, it is the solubility, volatility and partition coefficients are if you take solubility, it is how easily a contaminant is dissolvable in water, and larger solubility leads to greater mobility. It can be carried away by the water. Then volatility refers to the tendency of a substance to evaporate into the air. So it will be dispersed in the atmosphere. Then partition coefficients are two parameters. So octanol water partition coefficient KOW, this indicates how the contaminant partitions between organic and aqueous phases are indicated. So if the value of KOW is higher, the bioaccumulation potential is also higher. Then soil water partition coefficient KOC, this reflects the tendency of a contaminant to adsorb to soil particles and between the aqueous phase. So if the value is higher, that indicates higher soil adsorption. The next property, that is physical properties. Physical properties is density, particle size and boiling point. If the density is higher means if it is higher means it will sink. If the density is lower means it will easily be carried away by the water. If the particle size also, if the particle is smaller means it will be remaining suspended over long distances. Boiling point, based on the boiling point, the volatility and the potential for atmospheric dispersion is possible. Then chemical stability. Chemical stability is based on the reactivity, how readily contaminant undergoes chemical reactions like oxidation, hydrolysis, etc. If it is easily reactive means it will degrade faster. Degradation products, the degradation products also affects the overall toxicity and the environmental impact. Then processes influencing fate and transport. The transport processes includes advection, diffusion, dispersion, sorption, desorption, volatilization. So the advection means it is the bulk flow of water or air. The contaminant will flow along with the water or air. So with the bulk flow, it will be carried out through long distances. Then diffusion is the movement of contaminants from area of high concentration to low concentration due to concentration gradients. Dispersion is spreading due to turbulence and mixing of the fluids. Sorption is the adherence to soil or sediment particles. So if it is adsorbed means it cannot move. Desorption is the release of the contaminants from soil or sediment particles from the sorption condition into the aqueous phase. Volatilization is transition from liquid or solid phase to the gaseous phase. Then again, environmental processes are there through precipitation, through deposition, infiltration and percolation. So you know what is precipitation? It is that the contaminants can be transferred from the atmosphere by rain or snow. This will lead to the deposition on the land. The contaminant will get deposited on land or water surfaces. Then it will get through deposition, it will get deposited on the buildings or air or soil, and it will be carried out during rain to the ground again. Infiltration and percolation, this is the movement from surface water into groundwater through the soil. So this is happening based on the soil properties and the precipitation rates. Then biological processes include bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Then degradation processes, there are some degradation processes. Biodegradation is carried out by the microorganisms. Chemical degradation is carried out by the chemical reaction or photolysis, that is decomposition by sunlight. Then photodegradation is the degradation through the exposure to sunlight, particularly ultraviolet radiation. Then what are the parameters? Parameters which affect the fate and transport of the contaminant. So the contaminant, for that the environmental media, that is soil, water and air. So the soil, if you take the soil, the texture of the soil and the structure of the soil is responsible. For sandy soil can have higher infiltration rates, while clay soil has less infiltration but higher absorption. Soil moisture, so moisture in the soil also affects the movement of the contaminants. And water, in water the flow rate of water will increase the flow rate of the contaminants from through long distances. Then water chemistry, that is the nature of the water, that is pH in the water, temperature, ionic strength, etc. will affect the solubility, sorption and degradation of the contaminants. Then air, wind speed and direction will affect the dispersion and transport of the airborne contaminants. Then the temperature and humidity are also influencing the volatility and atmospheric chemistry of the contaminants. Then again chemical interactions, there are again the parameters or chemical interactions, that is complexation. If the two chemicals are combining together, it will form a complex, so it will affect the mobility and toxicity. Then co-sorption, so if it is combining or absorbed with some other materials, that is called as co-sorption. Then biological factors include the microbial community, so that is the presence and activity of the microorganisms which will enhance the biodegradation rates and pathways. Then planting, plants also can absorb the contaminants from the soil or through water, that will affect the distribution and it will be accumulated in the plants. Then modeling fate and transport, so we can follow all these transportation pathways through models. So numerical models includes hydrological models for finding out the movement of water and contaminant transport in aquatic systems. Then atmospheric models for predicting the dispersion of airborne contaminants. Then soil models, the movement of the contaminant in the soil and transformation in the soil. The receptor exposure to environmental contaminants. Receptor is the human or ecosystem or plants or anything which are receiving which are exposed to these environmental contaminants. So the types of receptors include human receptors, ecological receptors. Human receptors may be individual humans. They may receive these contaminants by inhalation, ingestion or dermal contact between the skin. The vulnerable populations, vulnerable or weak population, weak persons like children, elderly people, pregnant women and individuals which has already some health issues. Then ecological receptors are wildlife like birds, animals, fish, etc. Plants also can absorb these contaminants. Microorganisms. Microorganisms are also the receptors. So soil and water microorganisms will be playing a role in nutrient cycling and decomposition. So this also will be impacted by the contaminants. Then exposure pathways, how these are exposed, how we get exposure to these contaminants. First one is inhalation exposure, airborne contaminants. So contaminants, if it is present in the air, we may be inhaling those contaminants, and the sources are from exhaust from the vehicles or wildfires. Then factors influencing the inhalation exposure is pollutant concentration, how much concentration is present in the air. So that is the thing, and duration of exposure and the ventilation rates. Then dermal exposure, through touching through our skin. So it will be contaminated by coming in contact with soil, water or other materials which are already contaminated. Then occupational exposure, the workers who are handling hazardous material or working in any contaminated sites may come into dermal exposure to those contaminants. Then ingestion exposure, ingestion is intaking through drinking or drinking water or groundwater or surface water or contaminated food, or sometimes even fish like that. For some fish which are contaminated with the heavy metals, if we take inside or eat those foods, means it will be those contaminants will be transferred to our body. Then soil ingestion, some small children may be having the habit of taking some soil inside, or we may be in some indirect ways or direct ways, soil also may be contaminating or getting inside our body. Indirect exposure is through biomagnification. So the higher organisms, when they eat through the food chain, it will reach the predators, and the concentration will be increasing. Exposure assessment methods. So we have to assess these things, and there are some methods to assess these exposure. So first is monitoring methods, then next is modeling techniques. So monitoring is, we have to monitor the air quality using some devices like air samplers. Then we can take water samples and testing it in the labs. Then soil sampling, take some sample soils and find out the presence of contaminants by doing some experiments in the lab. Then biological modeling, measuring the contaminants present in the biological tissues or body liquids like blood, urine, etc. Then modeling techniques include modeling and estimation. Exposure models, predicting exposure based on the contaminant concentrations, environmental transport and receptor behavior. So these dispersion or the movement of these contaminants can be modeled, and we can study those behavior through the models. Then risk assessment models, assessing the potential health risk based on the exposure estimates and toxicity data, we can do the risk assessment models. Then survey methods are also there. So exposure assessment, survey and questionnaires. We can ask some questions about the health surveys or any behavioral surveys. We can gather information on these activities from the populations to estimate the exposure levels. Then biomarker types are there. Biomarkers are exposure biomarkers or effect biomarkers. Exposure biomarkers are substances which are present in the biological samples that indicate exposure to contaminants, that is heavy metals in the blood. Effect biomarkers are indicators of biological effects or any damage caused by exposure to contaminants. Example, liver enzymes, DNA damage.